Welcome, my friends, to another episode of the Chasing Poker Greatness podcast. As always, this is your host, the founder of ChasingPokerGreatness.com, Coach Brad Wilson. Today's Friday, which means down for some philosophical conversations with my good friend and co-host Duncan Palomortis. Duncan, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good, Brad. How's everything with you?
Life is good. Can't complain. Just
Excellent.
right in the middle of my favorite season in the fall, and weather's cooling off, and just yeah, my favorite time of year.
I like it. I like it. Yeah, here it's not cooling off at all. So I'm traveling right now, and wherever I go, the temperature seems to be the same. So
Yeah, you live that Southern California, Los Angeles life of 70 degrees year round. So
right. That's right.
yeah,
That's right. And I can't say I can't complain, right? I mean, I really like it. If it can be like every day 70 degrees, perfectly fine with that.
yeah, I think I would be perfectly okay with that as well.
Awesome.
Uh, so what's going to be the topic of conversation today?
Actually, that's a very good segue, and we didn't plan that. So, because the topic of today is balance, right? So, and sometimes the same temperature is very imbalanced because it's basically the same temperature every day. So sometimes balance is a good thing. Sometimes not having balance is a good thing. So we were thinking of talking about the idea of balance, balancing a poker and personal life and having free time and studying and all of the good stuff. So hopefully we can talk some pros and cons, give some definitions, and end the conversation with some actionable heuristics that we usually like to do. So
Sure, and fair warning before we dive into this topic, I think you're talking to maybe one of the most imbalanced humans that I know, just because of how I operate and tackle projects and that sort of thing. So I'm exceptionally imbalanced as a person.
and you remind me of a quote that I believe Warren Buffett gave one in some of his interviews, or it was probably one of the annual meetings of his shareholders over at Berkshire. And he said a story where an interviewer asked him and his friend Bill Gates of Microsoft if they were to describe their lives in one word, what would it be? And without second thought, they both wrote down the same word, and the word was focus, right? So focus is something that very successful people can have, but in some sense, it's the opposite of balance, right? It's an extreme concentration on one thing. So, before we, jump into our horses and get excited that balance is all there is, there is multiple sides to that coin. So let's explore that a little bit.
Sure. And speaking of jumping into horses, we have Halloween coming up, so that's a pretty macabre image for the listeners.
Indeed, indeed, indeed. Live horses, not dead horses.
Yeah. Let's jump into the live horses. All right. I don't know exactly what that means, but
That's
let's
exactly right.
get this show on the road.
So let's start with that. Our standard thing. What is balance in general, and then we'll get to poker in a second. But what is balance? What comes to mind? What is the first picture that comes to mind?
Just that. I mean, for me, it would be if you break up the everyday components of your life
Mm-hmm.
into whatever is meaningful to you, whether it be family, friends, church, spirituality, just improving, learning, growing, all of these things. Like basically, if you just bucketed each of these things, you would spend an equal amount on each of your higher priority items every single day. So like nutrition, physical fitness, however it is that you would break up a typical day. A balanced life would mean, okay, so like, I'm going to be outside for 2 hours and I'm going to be on my computer for 2 hours, etc.
So having enough time to do the things that you like.
Yeah, all the things that you like on, a daily basis, effectively.
Right. Just out of curiosity, I guess it's a little bit of a nuance, but a follow-up question. Uh, if an individual likes certain things, like for example, they like to spend a lot of time um, to have like mental stimulation or just physical stimulation, um, but they don't like, for example, the opposite. They don't like the physical stimulation or they don't like the mental stimulation. Would we still consider a person like that balanced just because they have enough time to do the things that they like?
I think so. I
Okay,
think it's subjective, right? Because like
sure.
different different strokes for different folks, and whatever you value, whatever resonates with you, whatever you prioritize, I think would fall into that category. And there's a billion different things that we could individually prioritize as human beings, and that's one of the reasons that humanity is quite interesting, because we just value many different things.
Indeed, indeed. And I think that sort of like already sets up the stage for the next question, which is how, more specifically, what does like a balanced poker career or a balanced poker schedule look like to you? Like, you can perhaps give us an example from your personal life, and we can extrapolate for other people as well.
Yeah, I mean, so I mean, a balance. So basically, again, it's setting priorities, like what matters to you as a poker player. So, um, as like a professional poker player, volume does matter. It is a big deal. So, allocating time to put in volume to play cards, allocating time to spend time with your friends and your family, and then allocating time to study, learn, and grow as a poker player on a regular basis. I think those are, the big three. And then there are soft skills that also affect your poker game, your ability to make money as a pro. And that's going to be, taking care of yourself physically, taking care of yourself mentally, emotionally, spiritually. So yeah, that would be like, in my mind, the ideal professional poker player lifestyle is some sort of daily schedule that incorporates volume, that incorporates progress, that incorporates just unplug away from both.
I like it. I really like it, and I do have a lot of questions on that. And specifically, how do we go from theory to practice will be one question that we want to explore. How do we get to do that? But before we go there, one philosophical question, right? Is balance desirable, right? Because again, and even before we talk about that, what would you say is the opposite
what does
of
desirable mean, right?
very good?
So we just start there, right? Like, what does desirable mean? I would say that, again, it's a subjective thing where that varies from person to person, right?
Very good. Let me try to help this question a little
Sure.
bit, right? Because I mean, obviously, we can leave that open ended. But what would you say in your mind is the opposite of balanced?
The opposite of balanced?
What is imbalanced in your mind?
Like, only anecdotal,
Of course.
Anecdotal evidence and things that I don't even know whether they're exactly true or not. I think of imbalance. I think of somebody like, the first person that came to mind was Yukon Brad Booth, who basically just played poker for 14 hours a day every day for 10 years allegedly, right? So I don't know if that's true or not, but like that would be an imbalance. Or somebody like Nano Noko back playing 400 NL for 14 hours a day, 10 tables every single day. That would be an imbalance to me.
Very good. And so, because it starts to sound a little bit like hyper focusing, right? So
Sure.
imbalance. So, for instance, like some other examples that we know, some extreme athletes, which they also, like Roger Federer, famously, like he sleeps more than 10 hours a day because he's retired now. Shout out. But he used to train for long hours. Or
Kobe Bryant, right?
Kobe Bryant, MJ.
Yeah, just watched the Redeem Team documentary. I can't remember on what streaming platform it was on, but
it was on Netflix,
they told a story about how they were in Vegas. It was Dwayne Wade and LeBron James, and Kobe was on the Redeem Team. I think he joined a little bit later, and they went all out clubbing, partying, and were walking back to the hotel. They were in the hotel lobby at 4 a.m. And like, as they were walking through the lobby, Kobe was passing them going to the weight room at 4 a.m. And it just kind of hit them, it struck them like how much he cared, what he was willing to do to perform at an exceptionally high level. And then, they basically changed their routines to mirror Kobe's, but like basically, waking up at 4 a.m. to lift weights, not going out the night before. Your whole world is one thing, right? Like that to me it's an imbalance.
Very good. No, I would agree with that. I think that's a good way of putting it. And incidentally, if we define it that way, I think it's inevitable to conclude that failing to be balanced doesn't necessarily imply that we're being hyper focused. So failing to be balanced could be that, I'm trying to have a balanced life, and I'm trying to allocate specific amount of hours to specific things, and in the end of the day, I failed to do so. So somebody can fail to be balanced and hyper focused at the same time, is my point.
Right. So the opposite side of that, I gave some like good examples of being unbalanced, right? I think the other side is, waking up and sitting on your couch and watching Dr. Phil all day long, right? And not getting anything done, not being productive. I think that is the other side of imbalance, where or you're just a workaholic, right? You have a job that is very demanding, that they call on you at all hours of the day, and you're just spending your life doing this thing that you may not even particularly enjoy or aspire to be great at. You're just, spending lots of hours on a weekly basis doing that thing.
Absolutely. And I think that's a key component, not enjoying doing that, because I also have an example of a very impressive human being who was, spending about 10 to 12 hours a day making windows. And I've never seen somebody happier in my entire life. He loved doing windows. He was so proud of, his craft, right? So there are some people who are workaholics, right? But they're, again, we're getting into
Euro dreams of sushi, right?
Yeah, like, exactly.
Just same concept. You just a whole life spent learning all the subtleties of making sushi.
Very good. Exactly. Absolutely. So I guess to summarize, it sounds like, again, like you said, your question, what does desirable mean? Balance is essentially desirable if you want it in your life, right? I mean,
sure.
It sounds like that. I mean, you may want to be hyper focused, but there is a failure state. And again, do you want to, I mean, you already mentioned it, but do you want to make it a little bit clearer for the listener? What is the failure state? Again, like when we try to achieve balance, and what is the failure state when we're trying to be hyper focused? What would you consider?
Burnout is the failure state. You just do too much of one thing, and then you lose the motivation, desire to continue doing that thing. You have a lot of like internal conflict as it relates to whatever it is that you're aspiring to do.
Very good. Excellent. And so that actually brings us to the next question. What are some obstacles, for somebody who wants to be a little bit more balanced? Or why not? What are some obstacles for somebody who's trying to be a little bit more hyper-focused on their craft?
I think that, outside distractions are probably a detriment to both, whether it be balanced, where in time that you have allocated to a specific activity is being disrupted by something unanticipated, or whether you're trying to hyper focus, that time is being disrupted by something unanticipated. So I think like outside interference, distractions, all the things in this world that are designed to capture your attention, because we live in an attention economy. So phones, beeps, buzzes, pings, emails, texts, notifications, just all of these things can, pull you away from whatever it is you're intending to do.
Excellent. And I think we're starting to hit home run here, because these are some things that they're challenges for everybody these days, right? I mean, somebody sitting at the poker table, for example, things can get a little bit boring, let's say, and it's easy to get distracted, play with your phone, and then before you know it, a big hand happens, and you're like, what did this guy do again? I forgot what happened 3 hands ago because I wasn't paying any attention.
Sure.
So why don't we specifically go there? Because it's such a big problem. Distractions in this day and age are such a big problem. Just a quick anecdote, which I'm sure a lot of people can relate to. I have a good friend of mine. He's a businessman, really successful businessman, but he's telling me, Duncan, it's come to the point where I'm trying to write an email and I cannot finish it just because, like my phone rings, the other thing get distracted. And he actually had to buy this app to basically lock him out of all of his accounts externally because of how bad it became. And I know many people can relate to that.
Sure.
So what are some actionable heuristics people can at least consider?
Well, I think the first thing is to gain insight into where the distractions are occurring.
Mm-hmm.
So how is it that your attention is being pulled away, right? Whether it be phone, TV, just what habit is like uh the root cause here. And then once you have visibility of that, in the example that you gave, I think your friend took an actionable good step, right? Like
Right,
he just
right.
blocked his ability to access it. He took it away. And in doing that, it freed him up. I think that, I personally had a light phone, which is a phone that only calls, only texts, and you can only listen to podcasts. And I think maybe they added GPS recently, but you can't
Right.
download apps.
Good.
It has like an e-ink reader. So like that was a really great tool for minimizing my screen time on a daily basis, right? I can sometimes fall into the habit of getting on my computer, drinking my coffee in the morning and being like, well, what do I have to do today? And then just like firing up Steam and playing a card game on
Right.
my computer for, an hour and a half and just get sucked into that. So like
Right.
basically deleting that and then
Mm-hmm.
reinstalling it on occasion whenever, you
Right.
want to play some. But like just gaining awareness of where the distractions are coming from and then being proactive and taking steps to eliminate those distractions. Phones have airplane mode, right? Like
Absolutely.
you can put the phone in airplane mode so that you don't get texts, so that you don't get emails. Like all of these things have settings, and really there's just no excuse if that's a thing that is detrimental to your day to day.
Absolutely. And I want to repeat that word because it's so important, the concept of awareness, being mindful of what is it that's happening. Because in the case of my friend, he admitted to me, he was like, Duncan, I just do it and I don't even realize I'm doing it. Like I hear the beeping on my phone and I just go into it. And before I know, I'm in the middle of an email, and an email that should have taken me, whatever, 20 minutes, it takes me 2 hours.
Right. And nowadays, like most every phone has a screen time function. You can
Right.
see how long you're on your phone every day, right? So it's
Right.
like if you're like, oh, I really need to get to the gym, but I just can't find 30 minutes. And then you look at your screen time and it's like, oh, but you spend 2.5 hours on your phone.
Right.
Well, okay, there's time, right?
Right.
We're
Right.
just not using the time
Right.
in the way that we would like to because we're getting
Right.
sidetracked.
Right. Absolutely. And I think that's incredibly important. um let's stay on that, let's linger on that topic a little bit, because I think it's interesting. I hear a lot of people complaining, a lot of my students all the time, and perhaps we can share some of the things we are doing. Maybe somebody can get an idea. It's not like what we're doing other people can do. But for example, let me start. Do you have a specific I mean, I don't have a cell phone, for example, but for you, like, do you have a specific time where you access your phone or your emails throughout the day?
I don't.
Okay.
At about 8:30 or 9, I, you know, take my phone, my watch, and my AirPods off, and I put them on the little charger in another room. At night, I sleep in a different room
Very
than
nice.
my phone, so that even when I wake up in the morning, I'm not tempted to just like grab my phone and immediately be sucked in. So I do try to take steps to limit those types of distractions.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, even from like it's a challenge, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
I'm running a CFP group that has
Right.
almost 20 people in it, including the coaches,
Right.
and there's a lot of different messages. I'm getting direct messages on a daily basis and on Slack that um, a lot of times I feel compelled to respond to.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes somebody in a channel will post a 10,000 word essay that I feel like I am obligated to read. So sometimes these things just pop up, and I get sucked in.
Oh my goodness. Yes. I mean, it is, okay, awareness is number one. Number two, it's always Duncan's fault. So
Yeah,
that's
yeah. No, number two is it's always Duncan's fault. But yeah,
right.
like putting phone in airplane mode at
Right.
the end of the day, I think that one thing that I think is like maybe the most criminally undervalued tool.
Mhm.
If you want to do something, make a schedule the night before, right?
Mhm.
Everything you want to do out by hand.
Right.
There's real power in that. when you take the physical action, the things just tend to get done. So like,
I agree.
have a plan. Have a plan for how you want to do these things, and then execute on that plan, right? So you don't have to waste like any mental energy into figuring out like, oh, what, I have like an hour block here. What am I going to do? Well, I couldn't think of anything instantly, so now I'm just going to go to ESPN.com and read for the next 59 minutes. No, like, have something scheduled for that block so that you act on it.
Very good. And let me just rephrase the language a little bit, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that perhaps falls under the umbrella of what I would call, outsourcing, or perhaps self-outsourcing, right? I mean, that scheduling is part of outsourcing. Try to get all of that out of your mental bandwidth and schedule it for somewhere in the future. I mean, we can use the technology to tell us what we can do later on, instead of having to constantly make the decision, oh, I mean, here is my day. I have some flexibility. What am I going to do now? Instead, we have pre-planned or organized that ahead of time.
And I know this is kind of an abstract way that I think about these things.
Please.
But I think about it the night before as if I'm doing something good for future Brad, right? I'm like, oh, like I'm planning this out for future Brad. Like, I need to make my oats overnight to put them in the fridge. I don't really feel like it. I'm tired. I'm ready to go to sleep. But I'm going to bless future Brad by doing this, because when he wakes up in the morning, he's going to be happy that those oats are there, right? So just think about like giving blessings to your future self, right? You make a schedule, and then that's saying like, oh, tomorrow my future self is going to be so happy that it knows what to do. Because it was all planned out the night before. So like, just do favors for your future self. Be very kind and good to your future self, right? You don't want to go to the gym. Well, if you go to the gym, your future self is going to have more energy. They're going to feel better. They're going to have just more cognitive power. They're going to have more physical power. Life is just going to be much better for my future self. So like that to me is just make investments to your future self on a regular basis. And I think that is just, it's been really helpful for me anyway.
Absolutely. And if I just piggyback on that and add something, this is the value perhaps of a routine also. That, when I was younger, I used to, for a lack of a better term, I used to crap on routine. It's like, oh, everybody who has a routine, these people are not free, right, to do what they want. But as I grew older, I mean, there's obviously, go ahead. So we had a little bit of an outside noise, but as I grew older, I realized that the routine is an anchor of our lives. Like, it helps us take some mental bandwidth off using it on a daily basis, and we have essentially outsourced specific, hopefully helpful tasks at specific intervals, so we don't have to think them over and over. And an example would be, having specific days where we play our poker session. So we don't have to think, oh, I should play today, or maybe I shouldn't play today. So that decision has already been made. Or another example would be having fixed times for workouts. So, okay, today it's 2:00. It's time for my, workout session, or 8:00 in the morning from a workout session, whatever it is for every person. And
it doesn't limit you either.
Absolutely.
To being held to only do that whenever it's scheduled. Like, that's maybe, when I was staying at Commerce and playing cards 60 hours a week, which by the way was not a balanced life. Sundays were my off day. I played 10 hours a day on Monday through Saturday, didn't play on Sunday. But sometimes if, I went and ate breakfast and was like looking to hang out, and there would be a really good game that would just show up out of the middle of nowhere. So I'd be like, cool. And I would jump in and play, and not use Sunday as my off day, and maybe take Monday off or Tuesday. But like, sometimes, at least in the poker world too, there's opportunities that pop up that can just be too good to pass up. In which case you still have the freedom to act on those. But basically just having the default schedule is a great baseline.
Very, very good point. So essentially, we can still use our bandwidth whenever we want, but if we really feel that we're getting overwhelmed, we can always fall back to the default schedule, which is essentially the routine. That's actually
Absolutely. Right.
really well said, and that's a very important point about routine. And then there's also obviously other benefits as well. For example, health benefits, because again, a good healthy diet is a difficult diet. So if we were to think every day what we are to eat, on the spot, it would be very difficult to eat healthy. So if we have pre-planned that, we spend a significant amount of time to pre-plan that, it's going to be perhaps a much easier. So
Sure. And I mean, there are other ways of like staying accountable too that involve like outside sources. I think social accountability is maybe the best way to stay accountable to the things that you aspire to achieve, whether it be a coach, whether it be a good friend, whether it be a family member, whatever it is, telling them what you're planning on doing, asking them for accountability. I think just telling people what you're doing in general is another just really great life hack, because when we verbally express things to society, to the people that matter to us, we're way more likely to follow through because we want to be a person of our word.
Right.
If you want to quit smoking, a big step that is a scary step is just tell everybody in your Facebook feed, tell your family, tell your friends, like tell everyone, because that's going to create more accountability. That gives you a better chance of getting the job done. So yeah, leverage social accountability as well. I think that's just a really big deal as it relates to following through on, your schedule, and whatever it is that you're hoping to do on a day-to-day basis.
Very, very good. And it feels to me that, these actionable heuristics apply both to those who want to have a more balanced life and those who want to have a more hyper-focused
Both.
life.
Yep.
Both. Yeah, exactly. Whatever your goal is. So far, we have awareness is very important. Start with being aware. Second of all, extensive planning and perhaps even a routine. Social accountability would be another one. If you express it, first of all, if you express it, it's easier to understand it yourself, so you can take a jumbled idea in your brain and make it more concrete, but also you're accountable to all the people that you are actually saying it to. What else do we have here? What are perhaps some obstacles for those who fail to find either balance or being hyper-focused? What are some perhaps common traps? And for example, one thing that comes to mind as you're thinking is that people ask me sometimes, Duncan, what should I do, to get ripped? Like it's what is the best thing? What would be your advice to go to the gym? And always my advice, they're like, should I go like five days a week? And I'm like, honestly, just start with 1 day a week. Like one actionable advice that I can think of is sometimes it's important to start small, because consistency can be more important than volume. And even in poker, when people say, well, Duncan, like I really want to be the best, would you recommend to go to the casino for 60 hours a week? Well, if you've never done it before, 60 hours a week is going to be very difficult, professionals
For
can
sure.
do it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that there's a great podcast episode that Sam Harris did with James Clear of Atomic Habits fame. And James Clear basically says that, like, if you want to start going to the gym, if you feel like you're out of shape, a great first step is just get your clothes on, go to the gym, walk around the gym, and come home. You don't even have to lift any weight. Just get in the habit, start building the habit of just walking over there and walking back home, right? You don't have to start big. I think that's like the curse of the new year and New Year's resolutions, is like we want to go from like being gluttonous on Thanksgiving and Christmas and then just balls to the wall Jan 1, and by Jan 5 we're burned out and like, oh, this is awful. Well, you started way too quick, and you just slow it down. Like, these things take time, so you don't have to kill yourself on day one. Just start slow and build up to it.
Absolutely. And that's how eventually you can, even if you want to be in the hyper focused camp, slowly but steadily you can go from 1 hour to 2 hours, 5 hours, 10 hours, and so on. You can start
whatever it is.
Very good.
On the other side of the coin, I think for the hyper focused, it is just giving yourself the latitude to acknowledge that you're reaching burnout, that
Mhm.
your mind, your body, your spirit, it just is does not want to do this thing that you're trying to make it do, and recognize that active rest is healthy and good, and like you need time to recover. If you
Absolutely.
feel that way, it's likely because you haven't recovered from whatever stress you're putting yourself through, and there's no shame in that. If you're out of focus for the day, you're out, and just have awareness of that and go away. Because also, like, a beautiful thing happens when you step away after being in a hyper focused state over time is your brain doesn't just stop working. It continues making connections and learning even when you're not actively thinking about things. So there's not just benefit in avoiding punishing yourself, there's benefit in just walking away and doing nothing. And for human beings, I think that, like, getting something for nothing, that's kind of like the dream, right? That's the dream scenario. So yeah, just recognize that, like, when you walk away, you're still learning, like your brain is still firing. And so that's another thing, just like be at peace with that and be able to forgive yourself, or you shouldn't even have to forgive yourself, just be okay with walking away instead of just continuing to press and press and press.
Very good. And but I have to say here, you spoke like a true overachiever, right? I mean, so you're basically looking for somebody who is really, 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 really working hard. They have to convince themselves from time to time, it's okay to take a break. So I understand that. I can really, 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 really relate. And I mean, I'm teasing you, of course, but how about the people who
No,
are
no, no.
living?
It's good. I mean, there's a reason why I know these things.
Absolutely. I know.
The
That's what I'm
reason
saying.
is because there was a failure point that I
Right.
reached
Of course.
that made me seek out knowledge and try to learn and do a better job, right?
Of
That's
course.
typically, if somebody's like very knowledgeable in an endeavor, it's
Yeah.
generally because they have faced some friction as it relates
Absolutely.
to that activity.
Absolutely. And this is, again, I mean, this is the fact that, I mean, we have, sometimes it happens in our conversations. We're so much on the same side, it is a little bit difficult to see some other sides. I mean, we're two guys, we both play poker professionally, we're very conscientious, and then we're giving advice about people being organized, and we forget people who perhaps can be a little bit less conscientious. So
Sure.
if we were to think about the other side of the coin, perhaps the people who, you mentioned Dr. Phil, our favorite Dr. Phil, watching him all day long, or at least they may have a tendency from time to time to fall back into that undesirable effect, according to their opinion. So what these people can do, right? I mean, people who may be thinking that, what, I'm not doing enough, perhaps. They're
I
on the other
mean,
side of the cup.
the biggest thing is, like, I'll lean on the wisdom of my friend Adam Creek, and
Mm-hmm.
just understand what your values are.
Mm-hmm.
Understand what you want to do, what your goals are, how you want to spend your life, right? It's I know that I've said it before, but, like, the number one regret of the dying is that they didn't live a life that was true to themselves. And like, maybe watching Dr. Phil is true to yourself, or
Right.
maybe it's taking something away from what you would rather be doing. And in the case that, like, it's true to yourself, more power to you. That's what your spirit enjoys, go for it, right? But
Absolutely.
it's when things are taking attention and energy away from the things you would rather be doing
Right.
that it becomes problematic.
Absolutely. And incredibly well said. And it reminded me when I get in trouble with parents, when sometimes they tell me, my kids are playing video games all day. And I'm thinking to myself, and sometimes I say it out loud, that's where I get in trouble with them, that it's okay. If your kids are really good at video games, maybe that's
Well,
a good thing. And I know a lot of people who
I
disagree
mean,
with me, but yeah.
yeah, like, even if they're not really good at them,
Sure.
like, there's something about being a child, being a
Sure.
teenager, and really enjoying playing games with your friends, that, like, some of my best memories as a human are playing computer games with my friends when I was 13 to 18 years old. Like, it was a blast, and I woke up every day excited and pumped to log on and play. And like, why is that a thing that should be just looked down upon? I'm not exactly sure. And by the way, too, like, I watch a lot of TV at night during my wind down phase, right?
That's
Like I've
great.
watched all of House of Dragon, and I don't regret it. It doesn't make me feel bad. I actually really enjoy the narrative storytelling. I enjoy watching them. They make me happy. They make me think. And so like there's benefit in my life. So I don't want to take away um the few hours a night that I watch TV and do like something more productive, like reading a nonfiction personal growth book. I don't want to do that, right? I want to
Absolutely.
wind down in the way that I do. So yeah, just understanding yourself, what you want to do, and then also gaining awareness on the things that are pulling you away from what you would like to do as well.
Absolutely. And we sort of run full circle here because essentially, whichever side of the spectrum you are, it comes down to be self-aware of how you feel in a certain situation. So if you're sitting in front of the TV, for example, let's be specific, and you're watching Dr. Phil and you're feeling okay, great. But if you feel
Sure.
like I could be doing something else with my life right now, and I perhaps want to try and do something else, then I think the most important, go
It
ahead.
could be a feeling too, like the end of the day, like, oh, I really should have done X, Y, and Z while you're in bed, right? Like
Absolutely.
that, it doesn't necessarily happen while you're watching Dr. Phil. It could be like
Sure.
6 hours later when you're like, oh my God, I had these other responsibilities that I didn't get to. Like, why do I do this? Then you have this internal anxiety and negative feelings about yourself. So that's another spot to kind of pay attention to.
Absolutely. And I'm going to say something here to channel, my inner Shia LaBeouf, which in terms of an actionable advice, I think no matter what you decide to do in whichever camp you are, I think in the end of the day, it is extremely important. I know it's going to sound ridiculous, but it is important to actually do it, no matter what it is. Again, going back to the advice from earlier, right? Just walk inside the gym and get out of there. So actually doing it is the only thing that builds the skill. So
Sure, absolutely,
that's
right?
the only,
Yep.
and I don't mean doing it well. Like I tell that to my students all the time. It's like, Duncan, I mean, this is atrocious what I'm giving you right now. I mean, I have so many mistakes and I'm ecstatic. And my students like, are you mental? Why are you so ecstatic without that work? Because you did something, and doing something is so important. So find a way. I know it sounds almost tautological, but find a way to just do it, right? That's the Shia. So remember, for those of you who know the meme, this amazing meme, just Google it. But that's essentially, maybe have that mental picture in your head, or Nike or whatever you want to call it. But it is very important to go ahead and actually do it. Like you can only build a habit through repetition. So whatever it is, just try it, however sloppy, however weird, just do it. Like just forget about everything and do it, and let the rest take their place.
Yep. Today's Philosophical Friday is sponsored by Nike. Apparently, just do it.
That's exactly right. That's exactly correct. So
But yeah, it's not enough to like want to do something. It's not enough to take steps to like get something accomplished. You actually have
right,
to do it too. It's not enough to like build a home gym.
right.
You got to get in there and you got to move the weights around as
Correct.
well.
Correct. And small weight, just find a way to trick yourself, get in there 10 minutes a day, whatever it is, just do something. Like this is, I think,
Biggest boon for me as it relates to going to the gym or going on walks on a regular basis have been just, I know it sounds like just too simple, but it's AirPods.
mhm,
I
mhm,
listen to Audible and I
right.
just put the AirPods in, I go on a walk, and now it's like cool. I have this book that I really enjoy listening to. And a lot of times, like one thing that I originally did when I was building up the habit was I would only allow myself to listen to the book when I went on a walk. And so, yeah, I want to know what happens next in my book. So let's go on a walk and, spend that 30 minutes walking and listening. And then before you know it, like I kind of enjoy going on a walk on a
Right,
daily basis. I start feeling better. So,
right.
yeah, I think that rewarding yourself as well for doing something that maybe you don't want to do, like
Absolutely.
it is another big deal as it relates to building habits.
Absolutely. Find a way to perhaps game it. And game it in a way that it can make it work. So gaming
Sure.
it would be another way. That's my trick to get my son every day in the morning, right? I mean, I grab my book, and like you said, I mean, you're gonna see, what's next, what's the next chapter about, and it can be interesting.
Yeah. So just to clarify, you don't have kids, right?
I do not.
Okay. So grab your
Yes.
sun means the sun shining on you from
Oh,
outdoors.
that's right. SUN. That's correct. That's correct.
Yes. SUN. Got it.
That's correct. Yes. I don't want to get
Yeah.
out of
I was
context.
like, wow, Duncan, you really need all this motivation to wake up and get your sun in the morning. That's that's bad parenting skills.
That's right. That's right. That's right. And incidentally, is the pronunciation different? Because I have no idea. I mean, as a
No, it's the same. It's the same. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
got it. Okay, good. Because as a non-American, sometimes especially when I want to go to the beach, or I want to say that I can't do something, things can get pretty dicey with my accent. So, great. So, is there any, I think we cover a lot of ground today. Is there anything else, any specifically when it comes to balance, when it comes to hyper focusing, traps, any heuristics that we didn't touch upon?
Yeah, I think I guess the only thing that I would like to add is just understand yourself, and whatever side of the spectrum that you're on, accept your biology and accept that this is the way that you're wired. I think is a lot of times we feel guilt or shame or a lot of negative emotions as it relates to wanting to focus more, wanting to find more balance or whatever it is. But at the end of the day, it boils down to what resonates with you as a human being. And if you understand yourself, then you can start taking actionable steps forward. And by understanding self, I think understanding your values, what drives you, what genuinely matters to you.
Right.
And once you understand that, then it's the path forward is just much clearer.
Absolutely. So self-awareness, acceptance, and knowledge, knowledge of yourself, know thyself, perhaps it would be the motto there. So
right.
This can be very.
Yeah. And Adam has like a great values worksheet exercise. If you just Google Adam Creek values, it'll probably pop up, and would highly suggest anybody that's listening to this right now do so. It's just a tangible way of prioritizing, ranking what matters to you. Because I think too, like, what if like going to the gym is number 10 on your values list, right? And so you have this negative emotion surrounding like, oh, I just don't get to work out. I don't get to be physical as often as I would like to. But what if like, it's just a lower priority thing that should be only once a week or twice a week or something along those lines. Like that's totally reasonable as well. And then that way you just don't have these negative emotions that you don't feel bad about how you're spending your time, because now you recognize why you're doing what you're doing. I think that even that is just a big benefit.
Absolutely. And I'm smiling because allegedly Isaac Newton, lived whatever, like a couple of miles away from the sea, and he never saw the sea, or so the legend goes, in his entire life. So, you may not be attracted, you may not want to go there, or you may not want to, work out. It's fine. It's absolutely fine if that's who you are.
Right. And if it's like not even on your values list, then okay, let it go and stop hating yourself. Stop having these negative feelings,
Love thyself.
Love thyself too. Yep.
Very good. Excellent. So what are some places where people can go and find us and torture themselves with people like writing 10,000 words and stuff like that?
Yeah. So greatnessvillage.com, hop in to the Slack community and the Philosophical Friday channel. Why Alex Beats Bobby on YouTube, at CBG Podcast on Twitter, and Ask the Math Doctor on Twitter as well. All of those are the usual places to find both me and Duncan.
Absolutely. And because some people asked me privately, yes, it is Ask the Math DR, but Brad always calls it Doctor because it sounds weird otherwise. So yeah, Ask the Math DR if you want to find it, but there are not many people with similar handles, so you will actually find it. And
Ask the Math Drive.
That's right. Exactly correct.
It's a neighborhood that Duncan lives on.
Me and Mulholland. That's exactly correct.
Well, thank you all for listening. And both Duncan and I will catch you next time.
Thank you,
Peace.
everybody.